Hi guys, how are you today? Or tonight? Welcome to Parlour Tea, and we are going to talk about. Well, let me bring on our Sarah because we're going to go on our road trip, and we need our co-pilot. So, hi Sarah. How are you?
Hey, hello.
So it's just me and Sarah, so we can be as really rowdy as we want. We don't have Genevieve. This is not Genevieve. Um, being on the telling us we can't do that. Uh, anyway, so um, me and Sarah have been going back and forth with a bunch of stuff, and I know that we were going to talk about the merchant house, but we'll talk about that at a later date. We just knew that someone else had recently filmed something there, and we didn't want to infringe, so we decided to do drum roll. Boom.
We are doing something a little different. We are going to take a look at the Molly Brown house in Denver,
Yeah,
Colorado.
yay! And I have to
Yay!
tell you, I think it's really very fitting around the time frame about um, how we, meaning myself, seen her as an individual, a very strong, independent female that had her own aspirations and goals, and really pushed forward from a very young age. But I don't want to go into your spiel, but I'm very excited about this journey.
Yeah,
About you know Her real name was Margaret, but they called her several things. But she was the unsinkable Molly Brown,
unsinkable Molly Brown. Yep.
which is
And you're very right. Molly Brown was a force to be reckoned with. We have this very romanticized version of the unsinkable Molly Brown. This very, larger than life figure. And she was in a lot of ways, but not necessarily the way she's been portrayed in various forms of media. When we think of Molly Brown, we think of this socialite, very wealthy. And she was that, but she did not start her life like that. Her parents were Irish working class immigrants. She was born in Missouri, but her parents were very, very progressive. They very, very put a very heavy value on education. So Molly went to school until she was 13 years old, which was very unusual back then. And it was when she was 13 that she started working in factories. And that's where she always had this very sharp um, sense of the working class and seeing the hardship that these laborers and all of these people had. And it really made an impression on her. And it really kind of solidified this mission of hers that she carried throughout her life in one way or another of fighting for the everyday man and the rights for people and really like fighting for the laborers and the people that a lot of other people that had her wealth later in life may have not given the same consideration to.
mm, yeah. I think that a lot of people knew about her because she was on one of the survivors on the Titanic.
Yep.
I do have to say, hi Rachel,
Hey,
um,
Rachel.
hi April, hi Jay.
Hey, April. Hey, Jay.
Um, I guess Jay is answering because he said Colorado is the Ryan Seacrest of states. And I don't know
Well, Jay has been to Colorado. I haven't, so I don't feel I can say that he's wrong.
that. It says, and then April, I'm confused by your comment. And then he answered.
Which color?
So there
Oh,
you
okay.
he answered. Thank you for answering, April. But yeah, I think that you know she was more than that individual that was a survivor on the Titanic.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way,
And
I read up on her. She was in what was it, lifeboat number 6.
correct. So we have this. This is how we kind of know Molly Brown, right, as the unsinkable Molly Brown, this figure on the Titanic. But I had just said how she came from these very humble beginnings. So how did she end up on the Titanic, right? So I said she was born in Missouri, and then at some point, her and her family moved to Colorado. And it was in Colorado that she met her future husband, J.J. Brown, who was a mining engineer. And being that, and they did marry, and being around the miners and seeing this, again, back to the real hard working hands of the society, it just inspired her further. She started soup kitchens for people. She really, really worked hard when she saw the plights that people were going through. But when I say that her husband was a mining engineer, they weren't wealthy when this started out. What happened was, oddly enough, there was a silver crash that happened, and a lot of people ended up losing all of their fortunes. But her husband was very, very smart, and he did a lot of research ahead of time, and he was able to find a gold deposit. So when all of these people were suffering from the silver crash, they actually became millionaires overnight from this gold, and that's when they moved to Denver. They moved there in 1894 to this beautiful home that was decked out with all the all the fanciness of the day. They had indoor plumbing, full kitchen, all of these things that were the standard of wealth of that time. But she never let that get to her, and she just progressively, more and more, the more resources that she had to help the lower classes, the more she did for those people.
Right. I'm going to interrupt you at this point. I knew how fascinating and how strong-willed of an individual she was, but I actually wait. Did you wait? Wait, did he accidentally burn up some cat?
I have heard that, but that is, from what I understand, that is a rumor about how they would just, we're cold, so we just burned some money. I haven't been able to find anything that actually said that they burned their money because they just had that much of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I the what I read about her was that her activism towards um, why females have the right to vote.
Yeah.
She was a strong ally in that, and I find that awesome.
Yeah, I mean, she was running for very high standing public office before she even had the ability to vote.
Yep. I know that when I read about her even more, and I there was so much I had to write it down. She was concerned with the rights of workers. She was concerned about the women have the right to vote and be seen as equals.
Mm-hmm.
So she fought for that. She also fought for education and literacy for children. She
Yep.
was a socialite later on in life. She also dealt with historic preservation with many different locations to preserve the history, no matter if it was good or bad. It
Yeah.
felt that it should be taught, which I still feel the same way. Um, that her husband, which was J.J. Brown, um, actually came into the money, as you had said before, but she also helped feed the miners'
Yes.
families in the soup
Yes.
kitchens, which
Yep.
I think is awesome, and it just shows that when you come from nothing and you turn it into something, that you still remember.
Yeah, that was something she never lost sight
No,
of, that early beginning, not only in like her charity work, but also how you had mentioned how she was very, very active in things like education and historical preservation. That was something that was instilled in her very early on from her parents, who were so um, invested in having their children get an education as late as they possibly could. It was something that she felt very strongly about from very early on.
right.
Mhm.
Um, wait, it says right here. Wait, what is it? I totally agree with you, Rachel. I know Rachel. Rachel is one of the nicest people, as
She
well as
is.
everybody else that's on here.
No,
Rachel,
Rachel's wonderful.
Rachel is a very giving lady, and I feel just like I feel about a lot of other people in my life. I'm privileged to know. So, um, I find it fascinating that she was always pushed out there and put herself in situations that she was consistently learning.
Hmm.
Excuse
Very
me.
much so.
She speaks English, German, French, Italian, and Russian.
And Russian, yeah. Yep.
But
She really valued. What's that?
back then,
Yeah.
to have a fully knowledgeable individual, which you always used to see her with the cigars,
Yeah.
smoking with the men and walking in, that she was something, and you needed to remember she was something. Period.
100%.
And I think
100%.
that um, that she was great. I think that because of that was great. Um, I think that besides the fact of her that she was a really strongly lobbyist with the women's right to vote, that just engulfed her time because it was a really uh, near and dear to her heart.
Yes. Very, very strongly about what that was one of the many things that she felt very, very strongly about. And you bring up how she spoke many languages. That was something when she and her husband came into this wealth. One thing that they really loved to do. So they had this beautiful home in Denver. But one of the things that she and JJ loved to do was to travel. And when I say travel, they traveled the world. They went all over Europe, Japan, Egypt, everywhere that they could go, they went. So this home, even though it was their home and it was something place that they loved, the home was rented out when they weren't there. At one point, it was the home of the governor and the governor's family, and
Mm.
she was actually overseas in Egypt, vacationing with the Astor family. And when she got news that one of her grandsons had fallen ill, and that is when she dropped everything, took the first available means to get home, and that's when she bought a ticket that ended up putting her on the Titanic.
Mm.
Yeah.
I still find it like there are people that you know in history and you hear about them, but when you dive into someone that I feel this is a remarkable woman who shows every bit of every value that is really striving for today. Like that was in the 1900s, like,
Yeah.
and
Titanic was 1912.
we're
Yep.
still fighting some of the same things to be seen
Oh, yeah.
2024.
Yeah.
Like it's just mind-boggling. But I know that she had humble beginnings because she used to, you know, like actually sew carpets and draperies.
Yep.
Uh, but I just find it really like she didn't mind getting down and dirty.
Not at all. Not at all.
The end result was not just for her. It was she had what, two of her own children and then two
Yes.
of her stepchildren.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just find it fascinating the whole thing about her. Um, you know that humbleness still continued till the day she died.
Yeah, and it was that humbleness and that feeling of I need to help that is a big factor in why we know of her today. So we talked about she was on the Titanic. She was racing home to get to her ill grandson. And we all know what happened to the Titanic on that horrible, horrible April night. It struck the iceberg despite multiple warnings. Um, and like I said, we know what happened from there. Horrific loss of life, horrible tragedy, one of the biggest tragedies that we still talk about, that we are still very, very fascinated about. And she was not allowed to testify because she was a woman. But after the fact, she did give her experience to various newspapers. And one of the things that she said to the Newport Herald after the sinking, giving her experience, was she said, I stretched out on the brass bed at the side of which was a lamp. So completely absorbed in my reading, I gave little thought to the crash that struck at my window overhead and threw me to the floor. She then describes how she went out into one of the hallways and she saw a lot of people very confused, not sure what was going on. We have to remember that this ship was called Unsinkable. These people never could have imagined that they would have been in any danger on this journey. So she goes out into this hallway, and then she goes on to say, I again looked out and saw a man whose face was blanched, his eyes protruding, wearing the look of a haunted creature. He was gasping for breath, and in an undertone he gasped to me, get your lifesaver. You can read her entire experience online. There's various sources. She wrote extensively about what she experienced during the sinking. But that spirit of help the others, she stayed on that boat as long as she possibly could. She immediately jumped into action. There was a lot of people that were petrified. And of course, how could they not be petrified being in this scenario? But she jumped into it, and she was pulling people towards lifeboats, getting people organized. And the whole thing of her was to save these people's lives. This was it went right along into her vein of service, was help these people, get them out. You mentioned before that she ended up in lifeboat number 6. The reason that she ended up in lifeboat number 6 was literally because someone forced her onto that lifeboat. Mm-hmm. And we hear a lot of stories about how the lifeboats were not full. Lifeboat number 6 was intended to carry 65 people. There was only 24 on the boat when she was there. And there were various accounts of her really getting into it and getting heated with the crew members on that lifeboat, telling them, you better go back. You have to go back. You have to get more people. Threatening them with, I will throw you off of this boat if you do not return. But in all of that chaos, people had said, listen, if we go closer to this, we are going to be sucked under. So instead, she took the oars of this boat when everybody else was in total shock, and she rowed that boat for hours until they were rescued by the Carpathia. So it was because of this that we really have this very well-known story of that hero of Molly Brown. And it was after the fact, once they were back on land, it was actually the newspapers that dubbed her the unsinkable Molly Brown, a name she had never gone by in life. As you mentioned before, she was Margaret. She went by Margaret or Maggie, but they dubbed her the unsinkable Molly Brown, and that's how we know her today.
I think that, all of her, her abilities and what she did, not just for herself, but for families and the town and the women of this country. I'm surprised that no one ever wanted it, or maybe they did give her a Nobel Prize or some form of recognition for all of the hard work that she put into selflessly. Yes. Mm. Right. Yeah. But that's what I just find it a lot of this stuff seems to be pushed under the carpet as well, and she's only known as a survivor, but
as a survivor, a wealthy survivor,
right,
who was loud and boisterous and was disliked among people and all that. It's not until you start digging a little further that you really see what she was really made of. And you had mentioned before all the languages that she spoke. One of the other things that was mentioned about when all of this chaos was unfolding, when she's in this lifeboat, when she's on the Carpathia with these people that have just been through the most horrific thing that they ever could have imagined. One of the things that she did, we have to remember, there was a lot of immigrants on the Titanic. These were people that literally lost their entire lives when this boat went down. They were looking to go to the New World. They were looking for a fresh start, and they lost everything. And one of the things that she was very, very good with was using these languages. She was able to speak to these people. and she was willing to speak to these people when a lot of other people were not, giving them comfort, finding out what they needed, who were you with, all of this other information. And before they even got back to land, she had already organized. I believe the figure was around $10,000 that she had already gotten organized to give to these immigrant families and these lower class families that had survived with her.
I think that the whole thing is just fascinating.
It's mind boggling.
Didn't they do a movie about her?
They did. I have not seen it. From what I understand, though, it was not. You have seen it?
I haven't seen it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I read that it's not a very accurate depiction of her. But now, having looked into all of this and looked into her, I want to see it now because now I'm very curious how she was portrayed.
I think she's fascinating.
Yeah, she's really completely fascinating.
You know, everybody, and I said this to you before. It's very funny that because someone's a strong female, they're known as a bitch, and I find that's a really bad depiction of somebody. If they're a strong female, why can't they just be a strong female? Because you wouldn't call the guy a nasty name, but you just say, "Oh, he's just he's a businessman." I think she dealt with certain aspects of being human and treated it like it was a business, a inner determination to show that there is success within a female, and you could put your mind to something and make it successful.
And you can still be a empathetic, giving human.
Correct. That sums that up.
Yep.
So I have not been to the house, but we found this whole house fascinating. So there is her home, and it's her home it's in Denver.
Denver,
right?
Yep.
Colorado.
It is a museum now. It was, and it for a while it was in danger of just being completely abandoned and tore down. I believe it wasn't until the early 70s that people decided that this was way too important. We can't let this go. They turned it into a museum. It is now in the Register of Historic Places. You can go to it. You can visit it. But the thing that's really interesting about the home, so people at the home, there's a long list of repeat occurrences that people report when they're at the Molly Brown house. One of them is the classic cold spots. There are people that feel very icy spots as they're walking through the house. There is a repeated people repeatedly saying that they're smelling a very strong sense of rose, which I have read. I haven't been able to verify it, but I have read that that was a perfume that was that was worn very often, either between her or her mother. Her mother, Johanna, did move into the house with them at one point, and she actually passed away at the house. She passed away sitting in her rocking chair on the front porch, and that is something. There are rocking chairs in the home that people report seeing rocking back and forth. There's a lot of other phenomena also involving the furniture. Furniture apparently moves. Employees and volunteers have come in, and there's items that are in different places than they were. Rearranged furniture. There's reports of something happening with the light bulbs, where the light bulbs will be unscrewed, to the point that now anybody who works there on a regular basis, they know, oh, check the light bulbs. It's just like, it's one of like the routine things now because they're always unscrewed. There are sightings of a ghost cat, because of course there's sightings of a ghost cat. We hear about ghost cats all the time, where people go, oh, we didn't know you had a cat in the museum, and they're like, we don't. That's the ghost cat. There are reports of people seeing figures of a woman in Victorian kind of garb. No one has been able to say whether they feel this is Molly herself, because she was not the first person to live in this home. This home was already built well before her and her husband bought it. And there's actually, I read a couple of stories where her mother, Johanna, had reported seeing figures of people walking down steps. and seeing images in the house. So we have this very multi-generational, very, very long-standing history of people seeing things and feeling things in the house.
I find it like I wonder if it was around the time, like, is it more in October? Was it more in April? Like,
Yeah.
because of what went on at the Titanic and then her passing. Well, just we didn't say that when she passed or how. So
No, she actually, I mentioned how her mother had passed away in the house. There was also a nephew that passed away in the house that was approximately 10 years old. But Molly and her husband, neither of them died in the house. They both died in New York. Molly died, I believe, when did she die?
October 26th, 1932.
1932, yep. And she died of a brain tumor, and she died in a hotel in New York City that she was living in at the time.
Yeah, it was. She died in her sleep,
Mm-hmm.
and then they didn't know about the brain tumor until after they did the autopsy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well,
I mean, she lived
she lived a great life.
multiple lives worth of things.
Absolutely. I mean, for the time period of when how she started, and how she grew up and how she cultivated herself, because prime example of what we were all come to the US to find a better life, with freedoms and abundance of opportunity for people to further education and and really um, push for a better life for their family. And I think that does not change anything, even to today.
Right? And you got to wonder how many people had that dream and had that come true for them, specifically because of Molly Brown and her actions.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that if people knew her, I think she's inspiring. And if you didn't know her, I think she is inspiring. I really, I never knew all about her until we talked about like doing something out of the norm, because we had the list.
Yeah.
To me, I
just
just
see the Molly Brown house. This was a place I had never heard of this house being haunted up until very recently, and it's unusual because you have these other hotels that are associated so closely with celebrities or historical figures, and it's like, oh yeah, they're haunted, and they become known in this whole other level for being haunted. The Molly Brown house, I feel, is like kind of like a dark horse. It kind of slips under the radar of people with like haunted homes that belonged to famous or historical figures. And I said there is this list of the cold spots, the rose perfume, ghost cat, figures being seen, both after her passing, but also by her mother when they moved in. So this is apparently a very active home. One thing that I did when I was clawing through the internet looking for people telling their experiences about that they've had at the Molly Brown house, I really wanted to find some EVPs, but I didn't find any. Lots of people telling their stories, but there wasn't a lot in the way of EVPs and these other forms of evidence that we really look for now. Yeah.
That's kind of, I wish there was.
I know, me too.
Because I wish there was, I wish she was closer.
I know, right? I'm like, it's Denver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Colorado.
Yeah.
Sorry. Anyway, I just think that it would be really great if we just were able to, like, sit down and do a seance or play with the Ouija board and see what she said.
At Molly Brown's?
Yeah.
But like, so here's my big question. And this is part of the reason I decided, I was like, we should do Molly Brown. So we talked about Molly Brown. We talked about this very extravagant life that she had. She didn't die in the house. Her husband did not die in the house. We have all of these very common stories and notions that these houses that are haunted because tragedy took place there, because someone was murdered, or there's all the classic tragedies that cause hauntings. So if she had this life that was so just mind-blowingly amazing, and that was so fortunate, and she did not die in this house, there were the two deaths in the house of her mother and her nephew, why is it haunted then?
Well, I mean,
because I have one theory.
my thing is that I think she treasured what she had and what she actually was that she obtained as she went through life, and maybe her strongest, wonderful time in her life was in that home.
Mm-hmm.
That's my opinion. I mean, why would whenever we go through things, right? We always talk about like, oh, this item's haunted. Like, I find it like really fascinating.
Haunted.
Right. But I find it fascinating that something is haunted, right? And I also find it sad that there wasn't anybody in their lives, there wasn't anybody that meant anything to them, that they could have moved on to the other side, or moved on to another location in this our next level of life.
Mm.
I I just find it weird about that. And we've talked about not everything is that's old is haunted, new haunted. Hauntings don't have to be scary either. So, I mean, it was just maybe she just coming in and straightening up it
Just
because it's
fixing this here, undoing the light bulb.
yeah, it's my I don't, maybe she just wants to make herself known.
So here's my question, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this. And anybody who's watching, I'd be really interested in hearing everybody's opinion on this. So we typically always equate haunting with tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
Molly Brown, although she didn't die in the house, and although she had an amazing life before and after, she did go through one of the most significant tragedies of modern age. And you think about what she saw. She that quote that I had read where she describes the man, very pale, eyes sunken. This was something that was very striking and that stuck with her. So being that she went through this incredible tragedy, she was sitting on this lifeboat. And, when we watch things like the movie, it's hard to comprehend what these people saw sitting in this lifeboat. You're sitting in this tiny boat. It is freezing. There is nothing around you. And you are watching this ship go down. And as this ship is going down, you're hearing the metal creak. You're hearing the wood splinter. You're seeing it split in half. And while this is happening, you're hearing people
Screaming,
departing this life. And there is nothing you can do about it. You also can't escape it. You're in this little boat. There's just so much you can do. And on top of that, while you're sitting in this boat, you have to wonder, am I going to make it out of this? This was an extremely traumatic event for anybody who survived the Titanic sinking. There's a lot of stories about how children of Titanic survivors didn't know until much later in life that their parents were on the Titanic because they did not want to speak of it. Trauma, PTSD, none of these things were talked about at the time. Mental health was not a discussion, and there's many stories of people that even after they survived the Titanic, there was a lot of suicides tied to Titanic survivors. So my question about the Molly Brown house is, even though she lived this amazing life before and after, being that she went through this unimaginable tragedy of the Titanic and surviving it, was it that energy and that trauma brought back with her that stuck to the house and may have caused some of it?
I actually thought you were going to say something else, but
what did you think I was going to say?
I thought you were going to say something to the extent that, do you feel that that is the trauma in her life that brought her, brings her back to that type
Well,
of?
that's another
I
aspect
don't,
to it.
I don't believe that. I believe
Yeah.
that there are certain people in life that can deal with these types and forms of tragedy and
Hmm.
chaos and aspire and step out and step up. And I believe she was one of them.
Hmm.
And I do believe that the tragedy of the Titanic actually helped guide her in the rest of her time here on Earth.
Interesting.
Meaning
Okay.
the giving, the standing up, the sticking up for the less fortunate, the females having the same rights and not being. I mean, what if she witnessed something to the point like the guy goes, "Nope, you're not going. You're staying with me," and then what? Then the
Yeah.
female stays, and someone else chose their end of their life. And I just feel that I think she was just a strong person, and I think that sometimes things affect certain people, but other people can push things so far that it is untouchable anymore. I do believe that.
Okay.
Uh,
Because you do mention how she continued this giving part of her nature, and it's true because after the Titanic, she definitely didn't shy away. She definitely didn't pull back from life. It wasn't that long after that she became a very very strong advocate for minor rights. She continued her work in getting the women's right to vote, and actually, the reason that she quit when she ran for Senate, the reason that she quit one of her campaigns was because World War One broke out, and she went to France to go help everyone suffering over there. And she actually earned a French Legion of Honors for her work there. So it was something that even though she did experience this, it didn't stall her
right.
in any way.
She ensured education for females to be the nurses and all the like the all of those other things that men were not allowing. She was
Mm.
forging forward for females to be recognized in the same field. I mean, I don't know why a man would be so upset that a female is smarter or greater or equal or like I don't get that at all.
Mm.
I just don't understand why. Like, if you're married to someone and you love them, wouldn't you want them to be the best that they could be? That's just me. And maybe it's because I'm in a different time period. And I don't know. It bothers me that we cannot see each other for, you know, think about it. Females are the ones that end up populating the earth. If you don't have them, then but there's so much more than childbirth.
Mm.
But that's what I thought that you know she made people have a aha moment, or she made people look at things in a different way. Some easy, some were that was blasphemy, but
Mm.
I mean it is still the same way today.
So do you feel then that the reason that some of these things are still happening in this house, the reason the house is haunted, isn't so much because of the energy of this tragedy that she experienced, but more so just because that was her energy, and because she was so strong and outgoing and active, you just feel it just translated back into her house now?
I think that it translated back in her house, and I don't think it's an ongoing thing. I think it's a visiting energy,
Yeah.
and it's just checking on everything. And you know, she seemed like she had that attitude that everything was there and it needed to be in its place. And I think that's where you said the movement of other items all over.
Yep, furniture being rearranged and light bulbs coming unscrewed and rocking chairs moving.
I think that the rocking chairs moved, maybe that it really is her mother
Her mother.
still in the home. And I think that sometimes things are misconstrued. So if you have a mom and then you have someone that's famous, you're going to say it's the famous.
Yeah. Yep.
You say, oh, it's their mom. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. I don't think she was a very possession-based individual. I think she dressed the part because she had to. I really do. Based off of her being a philanthropist and an activist, I don't think she liked to gloat, but I think she needed to do that to get what she needed for the lower side of things. That's just me. Like, she liked pretty things, but so does everyone. But at the end of the day, I don't really feel that a diamond necklace.
You felt she would have been fine with nothing as much as she was with everything.
Correct. That's that's how I feel about her. I feel that I think she had that attitude. You loved her. If you didn't, you didn't. And you hated her for whatever reason. But I think that she was just an amazing individual, and and like I said, I do feel that she probably is a visiting, because there's such things as there are many multitudes of hauntings. There are the ones that are consistently there. There's residual. There's a visiting type of thing. I just think that what good, if she's still her energy, what good is she doing staying in that environment too?
Unless she just wanted to be there.
I think she just comes to stop by.
Do you feel that she would be, I don't want to say bothered, because I don't feel like she's someone that was bothered by very much, but how do you feel if that is her in her house, how she would feel about there being like a model of the Titanic in her home?
I don't know what that was.
That's probably my phone.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Do I believe that she would be? I think she would. I think that's a very traumatic, even though she was someone that was that strong female in this whole chaos, I do believe that she would be a little perturbed. Wouldn't you?
I mean, yeah.
I mean,
but being this this presence that she was, would it have bothered her, or would she take it of more of a, you know what I did during that? I saved a lot of lives.
I get what you said. I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see her going and say, "Hey guys, why don't you come around the model and let me tell you
Let me tell you some stories."
You know, I don't know about that one.
Yeah, I mean, it may not even be Molly Brown at all. I said, when they were starting and doing all of this traveling, it was a home for the governor's family. After the home was sold, after they both passed, it became a boarding house for people. It had a lot of lives to it. But what I thought was really interesting was that her mother had reported seeing figures in the home way back then.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what kind of, was it on a specific like land that maybe, or was it just built for them, or was it already a pre-existing?
It was a pre-existing home.
Wow, so we don't know what the other parts of that history is.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, like, when you talk about these things, if it's something that's like the situation, sometimes if it's not, they don't go. The history side of it doesn't go that far back.
Yeah.
They didn't document things as they do moving forward, and especially now. I
Mhm.
mean, you can go far back, and then all of a sudden it just drops right off.
Yep.
So I get that piece, but in the same thing, I think I could say it back to you on one thing. So besides the fact as the world, we all went through COVID, and that was very traumatic for all of us. Some more than others, but it's still a traumatic experience that is written in the history books, and we'll never not know about that.
Mhm.
I was personally a part of the World Trade Center. Um, I would not want a model of the
Right.
towers in my house.
Mhm.
I don't even want to look at it.
Right.
But I did suffer from quite a bit of post traumatic syndrome. I
Yeah.
was my one of my I don't even know I should say my biggest fear. Should we say those?
That's up to you.
Um, I'm afraid of heights, like
Mhm.
highly. Um, and then I don't. I'm not saying the second one. So,
Okay.
no. But like with heights, like what I witnessed, I would
Mhm.
always put myself in that situation. What would I have done? Would I have jumped or would I have burned? I don't know.
Mhm.
I don't think I could have done the no. I don't
Mhm.
think I couldn't. And that's upsetting to me. That whole thing, and that just
Yeah.
over. But that's why I'm saying, like, I don't know how she would take it as a
Right.
learning experience for something, or I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
It's.
very good. It's someone else's depiction, you know,
Mhm.
how they want to perceive something.
And she was such a unique character and
Hmm.
had so many unique traits about her and how she went about things. It's interesting to think about how she would have regarded that.
I mean, it is an interesting question. I mean, if
Yeah.
anybody's watching, what are your thoughts? If anybody watches this after it's not alive, we would like to know your thoughts on what you think. And then also, if I didn't say this, Genevieve will get very upset. Please like both of us, Twin Crow Tarot, and the Parlor. Share and follow, so I can say I did my speech.
There you go.
He'll be very upset with
Check.
it. Um, I think that if anybody finds her interesting, I mean, read about her.
Yeah.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay, Rachel. Um, I think if anybody finds her interesting, read about her because I think that that's the spirit that she had, and it'll end up moving, throughout people knowing more about her.
There's
And
a lot of resources about her.
she
So.
was a wonderful woman on so many levels that
Mhm.
I just think she gets pushed to the wayside, and I think it's because of her tenacity and because of she was so eager and so willing and able to perform at a level that was sort of standoffish during that time frame from a female.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, we always say put good into the world, and I really feel she did.
She absolutely did.
So
Absolutely.
it would be great to go and
I'd
visit.
love to go. The images, the pictures. If everybody looks up the Molly Brown house, it's a beautiful home.
Yeah,
The inside of it, the outside, the architecture of it. It's a beautiful, beautiful home. And also, if you do look into the Molly Brown house, if you do happen to find any of that evidence that I may have skipped or missed, EVPs or anything like that, please share because I would love to know more about what goes on in that house.
She's still mind blown that Lizzie Borden had a brother. We'll have therapy afterwards.
We'll have a whole tea just about the brother.
Yeah. Yeah. So what the next 2 weeks are. We're still going on our haunted trips.
We sure are.
Thank you.
Would you like to say where the next couple trips are?
So we're big fans of this next place that we're going to, and I really feel it needs more than 2, actually. So we're going on a road trip, virtual. Oh, the London. No, we're coming. We're coming to London. No, we're going to Salem, Massachusetts.
My heart home.
I feel the same way. We're going to Newark. This is yours, Jay.
Newark? Not going. Although Newark is magical in some different ways.
Yes, but we're definitely going to Salem.
Yeah.
I think that Salem has so many different layers to this. It's
so many.
How it started, how the hauntings.
Yeah. Well, given that Salem is such a huge topic, if anybody has any specific questions about Salem, we will be happy to answer them.
How many times have you gone to Salem?
God. We've been going a couple times a year since 2015. So, I don't know.
Luana's jealous. You just went. And we were jealous too. But anyway.
I'll be there again in November. So
I'll be there Friday.
I know.
Oh yeah, Rachel, you're gonna come.
Rachel, let's go.
She has to. I told her to bring the girls. It's great. Why I love Salem is exactly why Sarah loves Salem. Is because when you get in and you're out, you breathe and this euphoric. I don't know how to explain it, but just by that.
Yeah. That's just
home. It's like you're home. Like, be honest with you. Like Rick loves it for different reasons, but he's like, again, but like I've been going longer than we've been together. I mean, we've been together for almost 22 years, and I didn't go one time because there was a storm coming. Was very upset over that. Right? We didn't go because of that. And then I didn't go because of we were moving into this place.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've been fascinated with Salem since I was a little kid. Like, I remember too, my grandmother from Massachusetts, she was very into genealogy. Mm-hmm. And she had typed up a lot of paperwork about the genealogy, and she had typed up something about the Salem witch trials. And I remember looking at it as little, like 4, 5, 6 years old. And the first thing I remember thinking is, look at all the Sarahs. There's a lot of Sarahs on that list. But I mean, I still have, like, I don't know if you can tell, my massive Salem library. I still have the first book that my parents gave me about Salem when I was 12. It's just something that I have always been so deeply drawn to, and the history of it, and just there's so many different sides to it and aspects to it. There's so much more to it. It's my favorite place on the planet.
Absolutely. Yeah. I could go. I mean, I can go there. You know, we sometimes go twice a year. I went at one point. I went 3 times in a year. It's just the people are great. The history of it is fascinating. And you know, I'll just say this. That finger pointing because of the thoughts. We're not going into depth, but that someone was different, or they were unworthy, or God decided that they were not someone that was going to go anywhere that they did with the devil, and that they were smart females and smart minded business women that controlled a large portion of the apple orchards, and they owned property, and they weren't married, or it was just, seizures and stuff. It was just this, like, it mind blows me about how this is also done in other ways, like people that are trans or gay or whatever. They're always finger pointed, and stop looking at someone else in that way and look here. And that's why I think I've an attachment to it, because I think that it's
Anybody who looks at the factors that led to the Salem witch trials and a lot of the events and things that happened around the Salem witch trials, anybody who looks at them and goes, well, that was in the past, that was so far away, you still see it today. 100%.
well, I just, it's funny that when you look at this, and she said, Sarah, she's having surgery tomorrow. What do you? I didn't know you're having surgery tomorrow. But we're gonna send lots of love and positive vibes for Rachel. She totally deserves that. You'll be fine, honey. I love you, Rachel. You know that. Anyway, um, oh, her daughter, okay, her daughter's having.
Oh.
Mm.
Oh, Rachel.
Well, we're sending lots of love.
Yep.
We could send positive vibes to her.
Absolutely.
She'll be fine, Rachel. Um, I just, I lost my track. What was I saying?
Salem stuff.
I just don't understand how this was like 1600s and we're still battling. What do you call it? And I always say, no, don't worry.
There's a lot in common. You'd think like we're such different people. We've advanced so far from 1692.
Yeah.
There's a lot of similarities that are still happening today.
Yeah. Why is history repeating itself? Like,
because we don't learn.
No, that's the problem. Open up a book, people.
Yeah.
That's just me. And I always feel that we're supposed to look, and this was a part of history that caused so much. It stemmed all the way into Europe, that it was just horrible for that over there, and that lasted before and after.
And Salem is not the only case of witchcraft in New England. But why did Salem explode so much? There's a lot of reasons.
But that's next time.
Next time.
So we're really excited. I really appreciate you guys coming on. Send lots of love to Rachel and her daughter. Think positive for her tomorrow. But I want to thank you, Sarah. It's always a pleasure.
Oh, thank you. I love doing this. I'm a historian. I've been writing about strange history now for Hushed Up History, my website, husheduphistory.com, for 10 years now. I love doing this. I love telling these stories. So to have the opportunity with you guys, who I absolutely love and cherish so much, for you guys letting me do this is the best. Thank you.
I think it was a really great collaborative idea to come up with these things, to utilize your historical background and put that, into something that we both adore.
History and the paranormal can be such good friends. Such good friends.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it. And we'll see you next week.
Next
But
week,
Journey to Salem, Massachusetts.
part 1.
Getting part 1. It might be a part 3, but Genevieve will say,
4
no,
or 5, whatever.
we could just keep talking all day. Anyway, thank you very much. I appreciate
you.
you. And we'll see you next week on Parlour Tea.
See ya.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye, all.